Now we have just finished the content in 2022. And really quick before we continue, I would like to say a huge thank you to every one of you who hits the like button and subscribe to the channel. It helps out tremendously and thank you so much for doing that. Without further ado, let's dive into the content of 2023. It just happened recently.
Someone named Peter Furlan wrote in from Oakville, Ontario, and he had a question that he asked ChatGPT to come up with a question to ask you, Charlie, and here's what ChatGPT came up with. Mr. Munger, you've spoken about the importance of avoiding mental biases in decision-making. In your experience, what's the most challenging bias to overcome, and how do you personally guard against it? So I'd ask your answer to that question, and then what you think of the question that ChatGPT wrote for you.
I think the question wrote by ChatGPT is pretty good, like to the point and important and useful.
If I had to name one factor that dominates human bad decisions, it would be what I call denial. If the truth is unpleasant enough, people their mind plays tricks on them and they think it isn't really happening. And of course that causes enormous destruction of business where people go on throwing money into the way they used to do things, even though it isn't going to work at all well in the way the world is now, having changed. And if you want an example of how denial is affecting things, take the world of investment management. How many managers are going to beat the indexes, all costs considered? I would say maybe 5% can consistently beat the averages. Everybody else is living in a state of extreme denial. They're used to charging big fees and so forth for stuff that isn't doing their clients any good. It's a deep moral depravity. If some widow comes to you with $500,000 and you charge her 1 point a year and you could put her in the indexes, but you need the 1 point. And so people just charge some widow, a considerable fee for worthless advice. And the whole profession is full of that kind of denial. It's everywhere. So I had to say, I always quote Demosthenes. It was a long time ago, Demosthenes. That's more than 2,000 years ago. And he said, what people wish is what they believe.
This is a very deep sentence. What people wish is what they believe. Yeah, think about it. It's interesting. I mean, he is directly answering this question, to my surprise, like very direct. Denial, human denial is the first, the top human bias that exists that are stopping them making right decisions.
Think of how much of that goes on. And so of course it's hugely important. And you can just see it. I would say the agency costs in money management, there are just so many billions, it's uncountable. And nobody can face it. Who wants to keep your kids in school? You need the fees, you need the brokerage commissions, you need this or that. So you do what's good for you and bad for them. Now, I don't think Berkshire does that. And I don't think Garen and I did it at the Daily Journal. Garen and I never took a dime in salary or director's fees or anything. And if I have business I talk on my phone or use my car, I don't charge it to the Daily Journal. That's unheard of. It shouldn't be unheard of. And it goes on in Berkshire, and it goes on in the Daily Journal. But we have an incentive plan now in this Journal Technologies, and it has $1 million worth of Daily Journal stock. That did not come from the company issuing those shares. I gave those shares to the company to use in compensating the employees. And I learned that trick, so to speak, from the guy at BYD, which is one of the securities we hold in our securities portfolio. And BYD, at one time in its history, the founder chairman, he didn't use the company's stock to reward the executives. He used his own stock. And it was a big reward, too. Well, last year, what happened? BYD last year made more than $2 billion after taxes in the auto business in China. Who in the hell makes $2 billion who's a brand new entrant really in the auto business for all practical purposes? It's incredible what's happened. And so there is some of this old-fashioned capitalist virtue left in the Daily Journal, and there's some left in Berkshire Hathaway, and there's some left in BYD. But most places, everybody's trying to take what they need and just rationalizing whether it's deserved or not.
This is very much to the point. I mean, it's amazing how BYD did in China and how they succeed in China. BYD's founder is like born in rural area and like not really well educated. Of course, like at his generation, like people are not generally well educated, and then like he founded a company and just like huge success. I mean, it's amazing and incredible. And what he is saying, all those virtues are super rare in today's world. At least what I feel or what I see. I see too many bad things going on, and as he said, the agency problem is very, very big and happens everywhere. To my surprise, this is like what he did actually is the closest thing to solve the agency problem that I've seen. As in the last episode, I mentioned to you guys, like leave me the comment if you have come across like better ideas that those agency issues, agency costs. And surprisingly, he now gives me a typical like best solution for agency costs for the compensation. Did you notice that? So the BYD founder is using his own shares, not the company's shares, to compensate employees, to give incentives to the employees. And he did the same. Munger did the same in Daily Journal. I mean, the biggest shareholder is also the key manager of the company. And this biggest shareholder and this key manager is using his own stocks to incentivize all the other employees. Yeah, it makes sense to me. It represents a lot of virtue there.
Charlie, you bring up BYD, so I'll jump to a question from Stephen Spencer, who writes in from New York, New York. He's curious why Mr. Munger prefers an investment in BYD to Tesla.
Well, that's easy. Tesla last year reduced its prices in China twice. BYD increased its prices. We're direct competitors. We're so much ahead of BYD. I mean, BYD is so much ahead of Tesla in China. It's like it's almost ridiculous. If you look at BYD, which most people have never heard of, if you count all the manufacturing space they have in China to make cars, it would amount to a big percentage of all the land in Manhattan Island.
I believe in that. All the manufacturing industry, especially like sophisticated car industry, is hard to manufacture. Yeah, I believe in that. It's very interesting to hear from him to comparing BYD with Tesla. And it's good to know. I actually don't know. Like Tesla is decreasing price, and while BYD is increasing price. I actually didn't know that. It's interesting to hear him talking about that. BYD is definitely like successful in China too. I can see the cars and like very common for EV electronic vehicles, EV cars on the road from BYD manufacturers. And the Tesla, the point is the Tesla manufactured in China is not as good as that is manufactured in US. They are all branded as Tesla, but the quality is different. At least I doubt it, and at least I doubt the quality.
Charlie, this question comes from Michael Gallagher. He says, according to company filings, it appeared that Alibaba shares were purchased with leverage, and when the stock price fell last year, he was seemingly forced to sell, he being you. Can you ask Charlie to confirm that it was bought with leverage? And if so, why would he do that, as it seems to go against his philosophy? I got several questions that were similar to that.
Oh, this is exactly the same question that was raised last year. Remember? The using leverage to invest thing.
Well, yes, it's true. I operated with no leverage for long stretches of my old age, and Warren's the same way. And recently I did use a little bit of leverage here and in another place because the opportunities were so ridiculously good. I thought it was desirable to do that.
So back to the main point here, when you come across big opportunities and you're sure about it, it's time to have the big bet. Also call it the fat pitch. So when the opportunity is too good, it makes sense. It doesn't make sense to do not bet big.
So you're right, it's unusual for us, but we did find a few things. And by the way, if you go back early in my career, I used some leverage. I sometimes ask myself a mental question. I say, what is the appropriate percentage of your net worth you should put it in the stock if you think it's an absolute cinch?
What would you put? This is a good question. And no matter what's your answer currently, when you really come across that opportunity, do you have the courage to really do that? Well,
if you're the kind of fellow who's right and when you think something is a cinch, the answer is 100%, or maybe 150%. But nobody teaches people to think that way in finance. If the opportunity is great enough, the logical answer is 100%, or maybe 200%.
Somebody else wrote in, and I don't have the email in front of me at the moment, but he wrote in, quoting you, where you said the three things that ruin people are ladies, liquor, and leverage. So why would you use leverage when you know that's one of the three things that can destroy somebody?
It's very reasonable follow-up question to that. Yeah, women, liquor, and leverage. Leverage is very, very dangerous. I mean, like, I don't recommend any common people to use leverage unless the housing, like the typical leveraging, like use leverage to play game.
Well, I used a little on my way up, and so did Warren, by the way. The Buffett partnership used leverage.
See, when they are young, when they were beginning to build up their career, they also use leverage. The pros of using leverage is increasing speed. If your bet is right, the speed of accumulation is shortened. It's getting quicker to accumulate it to a certain point.
What Warren would do is he would buy a bunch of stocks, and then he'd borrow against those stocks, and he'd buy into these, they used to call it event arbitrage, liquidations, mergers, and so forth. And that was didn't go up and down with the market. That was like an independent banking business. And Ben Graham's name for that type of investment, he called them Jewish treasury bills.
I guess what he is talking here is it's leverage buyout. So when Warren Buffett is buying any banks, the banking industry, any banks, he's using leverage and borrow money to buy the assets, the distressed assets of the banks, and then put operations into it and to add value into the operations. And when the bank comes back to normal with business, all the valuations and cash flow becomes healthy, and his stake will like bump up a lot because of that. So this is a typical thing that private equity firms do. If my understanding of his saying is leverage buyout.
It always amused me that that's what he would call them. But Warren used leverage to buy Jewish treasury bills when on the way up, and it worked fine for him. I don't think either of us ever buys. Well, no. Berkshire has stock in Activision Blizzard, and you can argue that that's whether that'll go through or not. I don't know, but that's a Jewish treasury bill.
Arbitrage. The arbitrage play on Activision?
Well, yes, we went to arbitrage. But we sort of stopped doing it because it's such a crowded place. But here's little Berkshire doing it again in Activision Blizzard. And Munger using a little leverage at the Daily Journal Corporation.
I didn't quite get what he here said about the Blizzard deal, like how they played it. It sounds like to me they are playing the activism shareholder way, which is like some big players, they would initiate to attack the company, to attack its managers, and by being the active shareholders in this company and to like kind of influence the playing inside of the operation, inside the management and internal governance of the corporation, and affect on the result. And then after getting rid of the bad people and the bad operation management, then the newcomers can conquer and can like do the operation in their own ways. Maybe that way is how Berkshire do, because when they buy into Berkshire, this company itself, or textile industry, Warren Buffett is like active doing that. Because like my perception, like my old perception of Berkshire Hathaway is not like that. They are very like stable and like old man, like a very big stable shareholders that do not really take risk and do those type of game with a lot of fighting, like ugly fighting inside. It's a game of playing active shareholder to get rid of the bad people inside the company.
So is leverage the least evil of the three L's?
I think most people should avoid it, but maybe not everybody.
Exactly what I said. Most people should get rid of it. For common people, I would definitely think get rid of it, unless it's like traditional housing, traditional and like a common standard practice. But he also said not everybody, because he is using leverage. And he said the typical example for his success in terms of leverage is BYD. He used the leverage to buy BYD and earn a lot.
I have a friend who says, the young man knows the rules and the old man knows the exceptions.
Another question comes in from Brandon McKee. He's also asking about some of the situations with Alibaba. He said, how should investors view geopolitical events in regards to their investment in foreign countries? How do you look at the situation of the recent Chinese spy balloon in regards to the Alibaba investment?
Well, of course, it was a very interesting thing. Jack Ma was a dominant capitalist in Alibaba. And one day he got up and made a public speech where he basically said the Communist Party is full of malarkey. They don't know their ass from their elbow. They're no damn good, and I'm smart. And of course, the Communist Party didn't particularly like his speech. And pretty soon he just sort of disappeared from view for months on end. And now he's out of BYD. It was pretty stupid. It's like poking a bear in the nose with a sharp stick. It's not smart. And Jack Ma got way out of line by popping off the way he did to the Chinese government.
It's interesting to me like how he knows all the details in those stories. I remember it's the meeting, like important meeting in the banking industry, with a lot of high officials present and a lot of like important people, and Jack Ma was making some like irrespectable speech that he should not say, like some things that he should not say. It happens later. He was in deep trouble, and after a long time, just recently, Jack Ma is like kind of like be forbid. Only until recently that Jack Ma is kind of being allowed again to come back to China. I think he is quite normal now, like doing things in China now, like being present here and there. Like before, he has disappeared for a long time. Because of this, he has disappeared for a long time.
And of course, it hurt Alibaba. And I regard Alibaba as one of the worst mistakes I ever made. In thinking about Alibaba, I got charmed with the idea of their position on the Chinese internet. I didn't stop to realize they're still a goddamn retailer. It's going to be a competitive business, the internet. It's not going to be a cakewalk for everybody.
He's kind of admitting his fault here. I remember he actually lost money on Alibaba because of his big bet on Alibaba. He is like reflecting his mistakes here. Alibaba at last is still like very, very competitive retail industry, even though it's online, but it's a very, very competitive industry that well, he just like misjudged that. But I won't really say so from an independent third party's view. I don't think he did anything wrong actually. Like from his belief and his understanding and his due diligence into Alibaba, he is firmly holding all the positions. Alibaba is actually also retracing more than what I expected, or I suppose what its value is at. I mean, like he should not blame himself on that. I mean, he did his best, and I don't think he has like a fundamental or big mistake when handling that, even though he lost money. For an investor, losing money is very common. It's like eating, right? I think he did his best, and I'm also surprised Alibaba is like beaten like this. And Jack Ma's that stupid speech conversation is only related to finance. It's not related to Alibaba. So Alibaba, it has different parts in different companies. Alibaba is doing online e-commerce business, while Ant Finance is doing online finance services. So what Jack Ma was on the speech and talking about is about Ant Finance, not about Alibaba. But Alibaba definitely is like hugely hit.
Just about China in general, I had a lot of questions that came in regarding that. I'll ask this one from Wilco Schutzendorf. It's coming in from Walnut Creek, California, who just said, previously you stated that despite certain shortcomings, China was generally moving in the right direction. However, with the recent actions taken by the Chinese government, such as capriciously punishing technology and educational companies, declining to import effective COVID vaccines, escalating threats towards Taiwan, do you still maintain that China is a viable investment option for foreign capital, or is China experiencing a similar regression as Russia has seen under Putin's leadership that culminates in the invasion of Taiwan?
Interesting. This is also exactly the question raised in the last year's shareholders meeting. It's talking about whether China is investable or not, and a lot of U.S. investors raising questions, and others are saying China is not investable. So let's see how Charlie's opinion is.
Well, that's a very good question, of course, but I would argue that the chances in a big confrontation from China have gone down, not up, because of what happened in the Ukraine. I think that the Chinese leader is a very smart, practical person, and it doesn't. Russia went into the Ukraine because it looked like a cakewalk. I don't think Taiwan looks like such a cakewalk anymore. I think it's off the table in China for a long, long time. And I think that helps the prospects of investors who invest in China. And the other thing that helps in terms of the China prospects are that you can buy better, stronger companies at a cheaper valuation in China than you can in the United States. So you're getting the extra risk can be worth running given the extra value you get. That's why we're in China. It isn't like we prefer being in some foreign country. Of course, I'd rather be in Los Angeles right next to my house. It'd be more convenient. But I can't find that many investments, right next to my house.
This is the point, let's say any risk you can identify can kind of account into a number in your investment. So any risk should be measurable in terms of number when you're evaluating a deal. And his point is very good that China, you can get a better company with a cheaper price, basically. So in terms of investment, in terms of rationality and data, it's better investment. It's simply better investment, even if you take account into those risks that involved. That's his opinion. Do I agree with that? Yes, I agree with that. Not because I'm a Chinese. It's because the facts is like that, and I'm always telling you the truth. Like what I share is always what I believe and what the truth in this world that I see. So for what he said, a better company with cheaper valuation, basically a cheaper price for better assets, I believe it's true. And from what I see, it's true. The U.S. most successful investment companies are making huge money in China.
Alex writes in, Alex Formansky, I'm sorry, it's very small print, writes in, how have political events in China over the last few months affected your thinking on the country? Several people, including me, were taken aback by the forceful withdrawal of former President Hu Jintao at the October 22 annual Congress. President Xi seems to have consolidated power, and his actions have indicated that he thinks very differently about the role of business in Chinese society.
Well, I have more optimism about leader of the Chinese party than most people do. He's done a lot right, too. You know, he led a big anti-corruption drive. He's done a lot of things right. So I don't know where this man lives. Where is there a place where the government is perfect in the world of sun and sorrow? The democracies aren't that brilliantly run either. So it's natural to have some decisions made by government that don't work well. It's natural to have decisions in each individual life that don't work very well. We live in a world of sin, sorrow, and misdecision. That's what human beings get to cope with in their days of life. So I don't expect the world to be free of folly and mistakes and so forth. And I just hope I'm invested with people who have more good judgment than bad judgment. I don't know anybody who's right all the time.
Interesting. I mean, it's interesting, and still I feel like very amazed that he knows a lot about China. The point is he has a deep and accurate understanding of most of the things. And of China, his point and ideas are pretty like objective and neutral. I mean, like it's rare to find that. And surprisingly to me, he is more optimistic with Xi, the new leader in China. Like usually I don't talk about politics, and like I think it doesn't worth my time to talk about it. All the politics are complicated and dirty, and in every country. I mean, like basically they are the same. And in terms of this one, what he thinks, I'm personally a little bit like less positive about the new leadership than him. My principle is always like more central power, the less freedom the people have, and I don't like that. So the new leadership is getting new power, like more power than the older leadership. So I don't like the inclination. I'm not like saying anything else, but the trend or this inclination, I personally is a little bit worried. Yeah.